My name is Daniel Walker. I am 42 years old and I was born in Austin, Texas. I grew up in a Christian family, the kind that prayed before meals and went to church every Sunday. My mother was a woman of strong faith, and my father, although more reserved, always said that God had a plan for all of us. But for me, it never made much sense. Ever since I was a teenager, I began to question everything. The prayers that never seemed to be answered, the tragedies that happened to good people, the contradictions I saw in the Bible. The more I thought about it, the more convinced I became. God was just an idea invented to make us feel less alone. In college, I declared myself an atheist for the first time. It was liberating. I felt intelligent and rational. I began studying science and philosophy, and I distanced myself completely from religion. I thought faith was weakness, a kind of emotional crutch for those who can't handle the hardships of life. He made fun of believers, literally. I remember laughing out loud when a friend told me he had seen a miracle. I told him he should see a psychiatrist, that miracles don't exist, that when we die it's over, it turns to dust, game over. I worked hard, built my career as an engineer, and achieved everything on my own. Or so I thought. I had my own house, a nice car, a stable bank account, but deep down, there was something empty. I just didn't want to admit it. When my mother died, I refused to participate in the religious ceremony. I stood outside the cemetery with my arms crossed, staring up at the sky as if I was daring someone up there to prove me wrong. And nobody showed up. I thought I had won this battle. That living without faith was a sign of strength, that I was a man of logic, of facts, that I would never fall for the fairy tale they called the gospel. I didn't know that I was about to die, and that, on the other side, somebody was waiting for me. Someone I've denied my whole life. Someone who, even so, cried for me. It was a typical Thursday in Austin. I had gotten off work a little later than usual. I was tired, my head was full, and I had a slight headache behind my eyes. The forecast had called for thunderstorms, but I ignored it. I've always been stubborn. I always thought I could control everything, even the weather. I started my car, put on an instrumental playlist that I usually listen to relax, and got on the road. It was raining heavily. The wipers were barely keeping up, but I kept going. Once again, I thought I was in control of everything. Then, on a stretch of I-35, a car in the opposite lane lost control. All I saw were the headlights coming toward me. There was no time to brake, no time to swerve. There was a sound, a loud crack, a scream inside my mind, and then silence. I felt no pain, just a disconnection. Like someone had pulled the plug on my existence. When I woke up, if I can call it that, everything was dark. But it wasn't the darkness of closing your eyes. It was different. It was like being out of body, but still exist. No ground, no sky, no time. I heard distant voices as if someone was calling me, but they came and went like the sound of a poorly tuned radio. I later found out that the doctors had declared me clinically dead for 4 minutes. 4 minutes without a pulse. 4 minutes in which, according to science, I no longer existed. But two saw things. I felt things that I will never be able to explain with words. That night, an atheist died, and he found much more than the nothing he had ever imagined. It was there, in that limbo between life and death, that my vision of the world began to crumble, like a house of cards being blown away by a light but inevitable breeze. In the operating room, doctors were rushing to revive me. But where I was, there were no scalpels, no human voices, just a growing sense that something much bigger was about to happen, and I wasn't prepared. When I realized I was somewhere, the first thing I felt was cold, but it wasn't the cold of my body. It was something deeper. It was as if my very soul was trembling. All around me was total darkness, thick, alive, as if it were watching me. There was no floor, no walls. I just floated. My mind tried to understand, but no logic would do. This was not a dream. It was not anesthesia. It was real. More real than anything I had ever experienced. And for the first time, I, the skeptic, the rational one, began to feel fear. An ancestral fear. Primordial. That place seemed to have no end. Time did not exist. Minutes? Hours? I don't know. The only certainty was, I was alone. Or I thought I was. Suddenly I felt something moving in the distance. A presence. Or rather, several. I couldn't see any faces, But they were there, all around me, approaching silently. Some looked human, others, I can't describe them. Their shapes were distorted, voices whispered, some familiar, some full of resentment. One of them hissed my name, Daniel, in a voice that seemed to come from inside my head. I started listening, phrases that I myself said in life. God doesn't exist. When you die, it's over. Only the weak believe in heaven and hell. It was as if those words had created echoes, and now they were coming back to surround me. I wanted to run, but I had no legs. I wanted to scream, but I had no voice. I was trapped inside myself, and those presences came closer and closer. Some extended hands, cold, fingerless. Others just watched, and I felt shame, something I never imagined feeling after death. It was at that moment that I realized that it wasn't hell, but it was the way there. And in the midst of that silent despair, a single question echoed in my mind, as if it were being whispered by someone invisible. What if you're wrong, Daniel? I had no answer, no more. I wanted to say that it was all a hallucination, one last random firing of neurons trying to keep my mind alive. I wanted to believe that was all it was, but it wasn't. What I experienced there was more real than any pain, any memory, or any theory I had defended in life. As presences, they began to come closer and closer. One of them looked like my father, but his eyes were blank like a mask. Another had a distorted face like it was being pulled from within. And the strangest thing, I felt like I knew them all. Not as individuals, but as representations. They were parts of me. My choices, my mistakes, my sins. Every lie I told, every time I humiliated someone, every time I arrogantly denied God, it was all there, embodied in these figures. One of them came over and touched me. The touch was cold, but what I felt was a pain that wasn't physical. It was moral. It was like I was being forced to see the truth about myself. No excuses, no masks. Daniel, a female voice whispered. It was my mother's voice, but it wasn't her. It was as if someone was using her voice to reach me. You always had a choice. This is a nightmare, I thought. None of this is real. And then, another voice came, deeper, steadier. You chose absence. You mocked faith. But the truth was always around you. I tried to counter-argue as I had done in life, but the words died before they could come out. There was no logic in that place, only consequences. The presences began to form a circle around me. One of them screamed, another cried. I fell to my knees, even though I didn't know how my body worked there. I couldn't breathe, but I didn't need to. I just felt. I felt everything. And it was at that moment, at the height of my despair, that something happened. Inexplicable. There in the distance, like a candle lit in the depths of a cave, a light. Small at first, but firm. She didn't push the shadows. She is Dissolvia. And where the light touched, fear withdrew. Pain ceased. And presences retreated. I didn't know what it was, but something inside me knew. Something that, even buried under decades of skepticism, recognized that light. That's when I realized someone was coming. And that light had a name, and I knew him. Even though I spent my whole life denying it, that light seemed distant, almost shy, but at the same time, it was as if it had a conscious presence. She didn't just illuminate, she enlightened me. There was no sound, no wind, no words, but all it took was for that light to touch the space around me, for everything to begin to change. The presences, once so threatening, retreated as if they were being driven out by something infinitely greater. Not with violence, but with a calm and absolute authority. I was shaking. Inside, outside, or whatever my body was in that place. But that light, it attracted. It wasn't curiosity. It was I long, as if something I had always known, but refused to admit, was finally revealing itself. It grew, slowly, until it became almost unbearable, so intense. But it didn't hurt. On the contrary, it was like to be embraced by something eternal, something that has always been waiting for me, something I knew every part of me, even the ones I never had the courage to show anyone. And that's when I started crying. Without understanding why, the tears just came. It wasn't sadness, nor fear. It was a mix of regret and relief, as if the truth was cleansing me from the inside, washing me of everything I had carried alone for years. So, In the middle of that light, one figure began to form. She didn't need to be introduced, I knew. It was him, dressed in white with eyes that seemed to contain all the pain and all the love in the world at the same time. He looked at me and cried. Yes, Jesus cried for me, and that destroyed me inside, because I spent my life mocking him, ridiculing his existence, laughing at the faith of others. And yet, there he was, crying, not out of anger, but out of compassion, of a love that does not judge, a love that waits, that supports, that does not give up. And if you've made it this far, if this story made you feel something, even if small, tell me in the comments, do you believe that someone can change after death? Or do you think fate is already sealed? Your answer may touch someone, perhaps more than you realize. Now let me continue. He hadn't said a word yet, but I was already hearing everything I needed to, because in that look was the message. And she said, "You still have a chance, Daniel." He didn't walk. He was approaching as if space itself bowed to his presence. It was as if time was suspended, as if everything around him stopped just to make room for that moment. I, Daniel Walker, 42 years old, an atheist by conviction, found myself face to face with Jesus Christ. It wasn't like in the paintings. It wasn't like in the movies. There were no halos, no choirs of angels in the background. There was presence. He had true. It was like looking at the very meaning of existence and suddenly realizing that everything you believed in was wrong. Your eyes, I will never forget. They had a sweet sadness, as if he felt all the pain in the world, and yet he continued to love. It was as if he knew every tear I ever cried, every word I swallowed, every cruel act I justified with logic and sarcasm, and yet he remained there, firm, silent, crying for me. I tried to look away. I wanted to run away. I wanted to disappear, like a son who is ashamed in front of his father after having destroyed everything he was given. But something was stopping me, not physically. It was something deeper, a force that said, "See, you have to see." And I saw. He reached out his hand, and as he touched my chest, images began to appear all around us like memories projected into eternity itself. I saw my childhood, the moments when I felt afraid and prayed in secret, even though I told everyone that I didn't believe. I saw my mother praying for me. I saw every time someone spoke of God and I ignored them. Every opportunity to choose good, and I preferred sarcasm. But the most painful thing was not seeing the mistakes. It was to see what could have been. I saw people I could have helped but ignored, friends who walked away because I was cold, words I never said, and he saw all this with me, without accusing, just crying, because each of those choices I moved away from him. And yet, he was there. The only thing I could say was, "Why did you cry for me?" And he answered, not with words, but with a look that pierced my soul. And there I understood. He cried because he always loved me, even when I denied him. His tears were not like ours. They did not just run down his eyes. They went through everything. They were silent, but they spoke louder than any sermon. They were soft, but they carried the weight of a love infinite and of a pain that I myself caused. At that moment, I understood something that no theological discussion, no academic debate, no philosophy book would ever teach me. God's greatest suffering is not our wickedness. It is our absence. Jesus did not weep for my sins per se. He wept for, I'm lost. For every day he waited for me and I didn't come. For every time he knocked on the door of my heart and I scoffed. For every night he saw me broken inside and I pretended to be strong. He showed me more pictures. I saw it when I was cruel to my brother when I was still a child. I saw it when I humiliated a coworker just to prove that I was smarter. I saw it when I ignored a homeless person who asked me for help, and I crossed the street in disgust. I saw the night my mother cried alone in her room praying for me, while I laughed with my friends about how faith was for weak people. And I saw myself as small. I, the rational man, the skeptic, the owner of certainties. There before his gaze I was just dust. I tried to justify myself. I tried to say that I was influenced, that I just wanted to follow science, that religion was too confusing. But he didn't argue, just kept looking, and those tears kept falling, because he knew that deep down I always knew that there was something beyond. I just didn't want to give in. I didn't want to admit. because admitting meant changing. It meant giving up control, and control was my favorite addiction. That's when he showed me something that broke me. I saw my life like her could have been if I had said yes back then. If I had accepted that faith that my mother tried to pass on to me. If I had opened my heart. I saw a different Daniel. Lighter, more whole. Surrounded by people I never got to know because the path I chose isolated me. And I saw people being touched by me, by words I never said, by gestures I never made. All this, lost. For pride, his tears now fell upon me, and I felt something burning inside. It wasn't condemnation. It was a fire of repentance, a silent cry of the soul screaming for a second chance. I knelt down, even without knowing how. I just fell down before him and said in a whisper, "I regret it." He did not respond with words, but at that moment, the tears stopped. When his tears stopped, everything around me went silent. A silence so absolute it was almost sacred. The light around me seemed to pulse gently as if it were breathing along with me, and I just remained there on my knees, feeling a peace that made no sense, not after everything I had seen, done, denied. But this peace did not come from me. It his vineyard. He stepped closer. His face was serene now. No pain, no tears, but still with that deep compassion that tore me apart from the inside. And without moving his lips, he talked to me. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't sound. It was understanding. As if he had spoken directly into my soul. And every word was clear, crisp, impossible to mistake. "You're not done yet." I tried to understand. "Your journey doesn't end here. There are things you need to say, show, live, but most of all, love." My heart raced. There on the threshold between two worlds, I had been given a mission, a task that came not from a religious obligation, but from a calling of love itself. Times, that word echoed like silent thunder. I wanted to stay. Part of me wanted to never leave that place. But something inside him showed me that my return it was not punishment, era, purpose. He reached out his hand once more, and as he touched my chest, an intense warmth ran through my entire being, as if life itself was being breathed back into me. But before he left, before he let me go, he said to me, or rather made me understand, something I will never forget. Tell what you saw, tell the truth, and love, even when it's not easy. The light around began to fade. The scenery, the sensations, everything began to disappear like smoke in an open field. But his presence, that remained, inside me, and I felt, more clearly than anything in my life, I was coming back to the body, back to the world, but no, the same way. Now I carried something eternal inside me, a truth that no argument can erase, a presence that no pain can destroy, and a message that needed be shared. The feeling of coming back was brutal. It wasn't gentle, nor was it pretty. It was like being ripped from a place of absolute peace and thrown back into a heavy, fragile, limited body. I opened my eyes. The lights of the ICU blinded me for a second. The sound of machines beeping, the anxious voices of doctors, hands holding me, muffled screams. I was breathing hard as if I had forgotten what it was like to be alive. A nurse shouted, "He's back! My God, he's back!" I wanted to say something, anything, but my body still wouldn't respond properly. Everything hurt. Every cell felt like it was in shock, but above the pain, there was something else, a deep silence inside me, as if part of eternity had remained there, with me. Little by little, I regained consciousness. The doctors said I had been clinically dead for more than 4 minutes. They said it was a miracle, that it was unlikely, impossible even. But there I was, breathing, back. In the days that followed, I didn't talk to anyone about what I saw. How could I explain it? How could I put into words something that doesn't belong in this world? But I knew. The message he gave me was not to be kept. One afternoon while I was still in the hospital, my sister came to visit me. She held my hand and with tears in her eyes whispered, "Mom prayed for you every day." She said that, even without believing it, you were protected by something bigger. I looked at her. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in years I let the tears fall without shame. She was right, I replied. It was no longer a symbolic phrase. It was the absolute truth. The following week I was discharged. I went home. but nothing there felt the same. The walls, the furniture, the smells, everything reminded me of how different I was now. I looked in the mirror. I saw the same face, but another look. A look awakened, as if finally, I was seeing life with the right eyes. I had come back, but not like Daniel the atheist. I came back as Daniel, the man who saw Jesus weep for him. And I knew that was just the beginning. Coming back from the beyond was not like in the movies. There was no celebration, no applause. There was silence, a kind of emptiness that sets in when you understand that the world kept on turning, while you were technically dead. But there was something different about me, something that no ICU, no electrocardiogram, no medical report could record. I had changed. And this change wasn't just emotional, it was spiritual. It was as if my soul, previously locked away by arrogance and pride, was now wide open, vulnerable, alive. In the early days, I avoided talking about what I saw. I was afraid of being judged, afraid of looking crazy. But the truth burned inside me. I couldn't sleep well. I would close my eyes and see his, still full of tears. Those tears, they wouldn't let me forget. One Sunday, after almost 2 decades away from any church, I decided to go into one. I sat in the last pew, alone, looking at the altar with suspicion and respect at the same time. When the pastor spoke of grace, of forgiveness, of love that persists even when we give up, I cried. For the first time, I cried not out of guilt, but out of gratitude. At the end of the service, a lady approached me. She looked at me sweetly and said, "You have a sparkle in your eyes. You look like someone who has seen God." At that moment, I realized I could no longer hide my story. I started writing, first in a diary, then in anonymous posts on the internet, and before I knew it, people were reading, commenting, asking me to tell them more. I accepted an invitation from a local church to give a testimony. My hands were shaking on the microphone, but when I began to tell what I had experienced, the room went silent, and I saw in the eyes of the people the same doubt, the same thirst, the same hope that I had once denied. From then on, I was invited to schools, podcasts, even YouTube channels. I didn't care about fame. I just wanted to fulfill the mission, tell what I saw, and remind people that Jesus' love has no limits. My heart, once so hard, now broke easily. I called people I had cut ties with. I asked for forgiveness. I hugged my brother like I hadn't done since I was a child. I went back to my mother's grave and cried like a child, no longer out of remorse, but because I knew that she had won. Her faith reached me, even after death. Today, every word that comes out of my mouth carries a purpose. I'm not perfect, far from it, but now too know why I'm alive. I know it wasn't a coincidence. It was a calling. And if you are listening to this right now, if something inside you is also restless, maybe this is your calling too. Why no one comes back the same after seeing Jesus cry? I discovered that there is a brutal difference between live for the sake of living and live with purpose. After I came back, everything around me seemed to have gained a new tone, a new layer. The simple act of waking up, breathing, looking at the sky, hearing someone laugh, all of this carried a sacred weight. And more than that, urgency. The mission that Jesus gave me echoed within me every day. Tell what you saw, tell the truth, and love even when it's not easy. At first, I thought it was enough to talk about churches, give testimonies, and participate in support groups. But I soon realized that the message needed to go beyond the walls. It needed to reach those who, like me, would never enter a church of their own free will. That's when I decided to open a YouTube channel. No script, no professional production, just my story, a cell phone in front of me, and my heart open. In the first video, I spoke with a shaky voice, my eyes still full of tears. I was an atheist, and I saw Jesus crying for me. And it was like a dam broke. Thousands of views in just a few days. Comments from people saying they couldn't stop crying. Others saying they had started praying again after years. Young people who, like me, had turned their backs on faith, but now were asking themselves, what if this is real? I was called crazy, of course, a liar, a manipulator, but every time someone said, "Daniel, your story changed my life," I understood that it was worth it. I started visiting public schools, telling my experience in poor communities, in prisons, and recovery homes, not with the speech of a perfectly saved man, but with the naked truth of someone who was rescued from his own blindness. And the more I spoke, the more I understood that my pain, my death, my experience were not about me. They were about others. About every person who needs to hear that there is still time, that no matter how much you have distanced yourself, denied yourself, mocked yourself, he's still crying for you, but not out of anger, out of love. Today, I look into the eyes of skeptics, and I see no enemies. I see myself, years ago, full of questions, armor, and fears, and that is why I speak with compassion, because no one finds Jesus by force, only by love. That's my mission, and I will fulfill it as long as I have a voice, because after you see Christ himself cry for your soul, you understand that you can no longer to remain silent. Today, when I wake up and look in the mirror, I still see the same face, brown eyes, slightly gray hair, marks of time, but what lives inside is no longer the same man. I, Daniel Walker, 42 years old, born and raised in Austin, Texas, who spent decades denying the existence of God, mocking those who believed, today live every day with the most powerful memory anyone can carry. I saw Jesus, and he was crying for me. And even now, so many months later, that image doesn't leave me. She is with me in moments of silence, in sleepless nights, in simple conversations with strangers. Sometimes, in the middle of a crowd, I close my eyes, and I see that look again, those tears, and I feel, deep in my chest, the echo of something that does not belong to this world, an echo that is not of sadness. It is from eternity, because when you are touched by something larger than life, nothing makes sense in the same way anymore. I don't live in search of the spotlight. I don't want to be a legend nor a martyr. I just want to be an echo, a whisper from heaven in this noisy land. Someone who points with a choked voice to the love that reached me when I least deserved it. And if my voice, my story, my pain, if all of this can reach a single soul, it was worth it. Because I know, with a certainty that cannot be found in books, heaven is real. And the love of Jesus is too. He cried for me, but not out of despair. He cried because he still believed I could come back. And I came back. Maybe you're listening to this right now and feeling something you can't explain. A restlessness, a lump in your throat, a desire to rethink everything. If so, don't ignore it. Maybe this don't be just emotion. Maybe it's the echo of eternity calling for you. And if so, please respond. While there is time, if this story touched you, subscribe to the channel now. There's a lot more coming. If you made it to the end, comment below. He cried for me. I want to know who stayed with me until the last second. Leave a like so this video can reach more lives. And now click on the next video that appears on the screen. It will give you even more goosebumps.